Hello and welcome to the top 5 commander cards from Insert Set Here. Yeah, so I've decided to kind of like go through a bunch of old sets and figure out some cards that would be good in decks or against certain archetypes of decks. So that's kind of the main idea with these videos. They're a lot shorter, and I think they're a little bit of cards that are underutilized in certain strategies and decks. So I figured I would just go through every set and give you about 5 cards that might be good for something. So for this first one here, we're going to be starting in Antiquities, just because Alpha, Beta, Unlimited, and Arabian Nights don't really have much to offer outside of like crazy expensive reserve list cards and cards that have been reprinted like a million times. So Antiquities has some pretty cool cards, and we're going to be looking at 5 cards from this set that are good against artifacts. Yeah, are you tired of playing against treasures and food and clues and constructs and all those kinds of decks? Well, these are cards that either going to help you against those decks or make those decks better in some way. So the first card I'm going to start off with here, we have Reverse Polarity. It's a 2 white instant. The updated text basically means you gain X life, where X is twice the damage dealt to you so far this turn by artifacts. So if you were to be being attacked by a slew of construct tokens and we're going to take 20 damage from them, you just play Reverse Polarity and you are going to gain 40 life from all that. It says so far this turn, as long as you're going to live through the turn, you can take all that damage and play this at the end of that, and then you would gain double that life back so far. So pretty cool card. It's an instant. It is only 36 cents. I feel like it's a pretty underrated card. Yes, it is in white. So, life gain does what white wants to do, but for that cheap price, I mean, you can't really go wrong, especially if you're playing against a bunch of artifacts. Next up here, we have Drafton Restoration. It is a 1 blue sorcery. It says take any number of artifacts of your choice from target player's graveyard and place them on top of that player's library in any order. Now, this could be your own library. Say you just got board wiped and all your artifacts got destroyed. Well, for 1 blue, you can take all those artifacts and get them right back on top of your library. And if there's anything that artifacts are known for doing, it's playing artifacts from the top of your library. This is a 1 blue sorcery. I mean, you cannot go wrong with something that cheap. Yeah, it's a sorcery, but again, not that big of a deal. The card is only $1, so not too bad. It's only ever been printed in Antiquities. And again, it's a nice way to save your own board of artifacts if you are playing in an artifact deck. And next up on this list is Energy Flux. It is 2 generic and a blue enchantment. Updated rules text for that says all artifacts have at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice this artifact unless you pay 2. So this is a real good hoser against clue, treasure, food decks, all that kind of stuff, because they now have to pay 2 mana for each one of those artifacts that they have, or they all get destroyed or sacrificed. So it definitely puts a damper on a lot of those artifact and treasure decks. And yes, there are other ways to do this, obviously, with things like Collector Oof and cards like that for cheaper. If you're not playing an artifact deck and you kind of want to get one up on your artifact deck players in your group, this is not a bad way to do it. And for only $1, you can't go wrong. Pretty underrated card, in my opinion. And if you're playing an Enchantress deck, it's even better because it's an enchantment itself. And next up here, we have another kind of stacksy piece in Artifact Possession. It is also 3 mana. It's 2 generic, 1 black. And it is an enchant artifact. It says whenever enchanted artifact becomes tapped or a player activates an ability of enchanted artifact without a tap in its activation cost, artifact possession deals 2 damage to that artifact's controller. So basically, put this on somebody's Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, or any other mana rock, and they're going to be taking 2 damage every time they use it. So it's a way to kind of stop people from using mana like that. The thing with Soul Ring, like, I don't want to turn my Soul Ring into an Ancient Tomb. I'm just not going to want to take that 2 damage. That's just me personally. And again, I think this is just an underrated card to kind of stop some level of artifact shenanigans or fast mana. And, it's a budget kind of alternative thing for something people may not expect against artifacts. It's only 32 cents. I say it's worth it. And again, it's an enchantment, so you could run it in an Enchantress deck. I definitely think check it out. It's also good in Tatsunori Toad Rider. That's another good deck for this card. And next up here we have Artifact Blast. It is 1 red mana for an instant, counters any artifact as it's being cast. A counterspell for artifacts in red. Do I need to say more? I mean, come on. There has only been one printing in Antiquities, and it is a little expensive. It's about $250, but honestly, that's the same price as like a counterspell. Yes, there are cards like Annul that exist in blue. Yes, there are other ways to like stop artifacts, defabricate, desertion, a bunch of counterspells that target specifically, but this one's in red. And like, how often does red get tools to kind of counter stuff? You get like a red elemental blast or something like that every now and then, and it only targets a blue spell. But the fact that this targets a artifact specifically and it's 1 red mana instant, pretty damn underrated card. Yeah, it is 250, but that's honestly on par with most other counter spells. So I think it's a pretty underrated card from this set. I used it in a few red decks, especially my Prosper deck, and it is come in handy when you counter somebody's Soul Ring or Blightsteel Colossus, something pretty ridiculous like that. Wormcoil Engine, pretty underrated card in my opinion. So, those are the 5 cards from Antiquities that I think are pretty underrated, underutilized, and can be used to hose certain levels of artifact decks, or in one case, help. Now, I do have one bonus card I would like to mention here, and that is Felden's Cane. It's a 1 mana artifact with a 0 activation cost. It says reshuffle your graveyard into your library. If Felden's Cane is used, exile it from the game, and then return it to its owner's deck only when the game is over. That last part doesn't really matter. It just gets exiled. But this is a good way to save your graveyard if you are a graveyard deck. Obviously, with like Bajuka Bog and Graveyard Hate out there, I think this card's pretty underrated because, having that card at the right moment is never a sure thing, but just in case, I mean, the card's been reprinted a bunch of times. It goes from anywhere from 63 cents to $1.25. The original version's like $8. So I think it's an underrated card, especially in graveyard decks. So definitely try this card out if you haven't. Give it a chance. So thank you so much for checking this video out. I hope you found these cards helpful or interesting in some way. I will be going through all the sets and trying to find like 5 or 6 cards that kind of fit some kind of theme that I would like to talk about that I think are underrated in decks, and give you an idea of what decks to use them in or against. I'm Wildcard MTG, and keep an eye out for videos like this or deck techs. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next one.